And that's Christian Felber. Christian Felber is an international renowned speaker. He's a contemporary dancer and author of several economic bestsellers. For example, This Is Not Economy, or Change Everything, or Trading for Good. And he was awarded several international book awards, especially for Economy for the Good. And he also received other awards. And he's the initiator of the Economy for the Common Good and Cooperative for the Common Good. Felber studied Spanish, psychology, sociology, and political science. And he in Madrid and Vienna, and the latter city in Austria is where he lives. So now we present Christian Felber as our second keynote on the 17th International Conference on Environmental, Cultural, Economic, and Social Sustainability. Christian, you can take the stage on screen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this conference and contributing with a keynote and on the panel. I will introduce the Economy for the Common Good, which is a practical model of transforming the whole economy towards sustainability first and foremost. We just released the theoretical fundament of it in sustainability in an article that's called From Neoclassical Economics to Common Good Economics. So we first did the practical exercise. Almost 1,000 organizations have already joined and done a common good balance sheet next to their financial balance sheet. And we are also striving for creating bottom-up alternatives to GDP as the highest measurement of success in a national economy, replacing it by a common good product, which contains everything that makes life worthwhile. And these common good products are composed democratically by the people of a city, of a region, or of a country. And my contribution is a proposal to re-establish equilibrium on all levels, because the current economic system we are holding on is creating disequilibria on all levels. And maybe with this entrance, I start sharing my screens. The economy for the common good can be understood as an economy that is based on systemic equilibrium. And it's a proposal to overcome the current crisis, which is not only the corona crisis, which is already preceded by a whole landscape of disequilibria. And they range from inequality to unstable financial markets, to trade imbalances, to power concentration, and loss of meaning and values. And we have just heard from Marian about some of the most burning disequilibria, which is global climate, and even more importantly, the loss of biodiversity. Here is a direct connection to the COVID-19 crisis, because COVID-19 is a so-called zoonotic disease, which means that the virus, which infects humans with the disease, usually only lives in animals. But if the pressure on the natural habitats of these animals by the way of life and way of running the economy of humans, if the pressure from that is growing too much on the habitats of animals, then these viruses jump over from animals to humans. And this holds true not only for COVID-19, but also for other known diseases like AIDS or Ebola or SARS-1 or MERS. And one thing is clear: if we keep running our way of life as we're doing now, and the economy with that level of consumption of natural resources and pressure on ecosystems, then we will kind of harvest many more pandemics. On the other hand, I want to say pandemics are avoidable. We have actually the free decision to create more pandemics or to avoid them, but then we have to regain equilibrium in the economy first and foremost with the ecosystems of the planet. It's not only about climate. Climate is one of the 9 most important and relevant disequilibria, but there are others. And the best concept that has been derived from the concept of planetary boundaries, I know, is the donut concept of Kate Raworth. And from her concept that today 8 billion humans need a minimum consumption to cover their basic needs, but at the same time, we should respect a maximum level of consumption of natural resources in order not to overload planetary ecosystems. I derived the concept of ecological human rights. Marian just said that the best way to compare emission levels is per capita, by person. And that's my proposal, to grant every human being, no matter if she or he lives in the Netherlands, in Austria, or in South Africa, the same level of ecological consumption as a consumption right on one side of the coin. And on the other side of the coin, it's a protection right of nature, because if all 8 billion humans consumed all their consumption rights, mankind as a whole would still remain within the ecological planetary boundaries, different from today, where only a minority is exceeding their non-existing consumption rights, and humanity as a whole is exceeding the limits of the planet. So this would be a first proposal to regain and reestablish equilibrium, but the precondition for it is the integration of this analysis of the broader context of economic activities in economic theory and economic science. And that's actually at the moment not the case. The predominant theoretical school of economics, neoclassical economics, does not consider biodiversity or the planetary boundaries in its theory, because its core theory, although it's called equilibrium theory, general equilibrium theory, is not dealing with any relevant equilibrium. That's my point, my starting point actually, because the equilibrium neoclassical economics is focusing at is the equilibrium between demand and supply. And it's very interesting. It's not at all an irrelevant equilibrium, but there's a whole list of by far more relevant equilibria, which are lost out of sight if we focus on the equilibrium of supply and demand. And actually that's what's happening, is that thanks to the narrow focus on the equilibrium of supply and demand, we are losing all these other more important and more relevant equilibria. It's the general ethical orientation of the economy, it's the ecological equilibrium, it's the stability of financial markets, it's a just distribution and the prevention of power concentration, it's stability in financial markets and in international trade, and it's the conception of man. I will go through these equilibria one by one now. Here I start with the general understanding and definition of economic activities and their contextualization. The economy for the common good considers the economy as a tool, as an instrument to satisfy human needs in the whole range, not only through market activities, but also through other types of economic activities within democratic societies on the base of long-term cultural values and within the ecological boundaries. This is a quite different start into economic science and economic education from how textbooks, mainstream textbooks used to do it. They jump directly into markets and mathematical models, and they neglect these relevant contexts. And they do not ask properly what's actually the goal of economic activities, and consequently, what's the goal of economic science. And our proposal is that economic activities should generally and principally serve the common good. And this is already a quite different approach from the approach that economic activities should serve making money or increasing capital. And interestingly, the distinction of these two different understandings is not new at all. It was made 2,300 years ago by Aristotle. He did not only distinguish two different definitions, but even two different concepts. Oikonomia is by definition an economy for the common good, because the goal of this moral science is the well-being of all members of the household, of the oikos. And money and capital were just considered as means to help achieve the goal, which is the common good, the well-being of all. And if this relationship of means and ends got inverted, he said this would then turn into the opposite of oikonomia, become chrematistike, which is the art of making money and to enrich oneself. But that would not be considered as economy, oikonomia, anymore. Today we use the word capitalism instead of chrematistike, but the legacy of Aristotle is that capitalism is actually not the same as economy, but the opposite from economy. That's a very interesting legacy. And the original oikonomia was actually an economy for the common good. Now we have to make a choice. Do we want to opt for capitalism or for economy? Constitutions have made this choice, and I have not found a single constitution which has opted for capitalism. Every single constitution that makes a decision on this big question, should it be capitalism or economy, decided for economy. Just read the first one, maybe. The economic activity in its entirety serves. It does not say the accumulation of capital or the increase of money. No, it says it serves the common good. It's crystal clear. It's not ambivalent. It's not dialectic. It's clear. And there is no constitution which says something else. And now comes, then why then, if constitutions of democratic countries today, we are back in the present, why then do we measure success not according to this goal? Because if we measured success according to the achievement of the constitutional goal of the economy, then we would measure the success of a national economy with a common good product, and the success of a company with a common good balance sheet, and the success of an investment with a common good exam. But we're not doing that, or we're only going in tiny steps in this new direction. But over the past decades and maybe even centuries, we've done something different. We measured economic success not according to the achievement of the goal, but according to the accumulation of means. And this is, almost sorry to say, a failure of method, at least in a true economy that deserves that name and that is in line with our democratic constitutions. It is fully coherent in capitalism. So with GDP, financial profit, and ROI, financial return on investment, we do measure success properly, but only in capitalism, which is not supported by our constitutions. In the economy, which is actually by definition an economy for the common good, we ought to measure success with the common good product, balance sheet, and assessment for investments. And our proposal to define, starting with the common good product, is to assemble as free and sovereign citizens and make many proposals. What are the most important ingredients of the highest possible life quality, including ecological sustainability, including health and happiness, including fulfilling and flourishing relationships and functioning democracy, including everything that makes our lives worthwhile, then the democratic composition of the common good product would be the guiding star, let's say the highest end and purpose of economic activities. And success of economic activities could be measured according to their contribution of companies measured by the common good balance sheet, and contribution of investments measured with the common good exam. Then the whole system of success measurement of a true economy would be in line and consistent with the constitutional goal of the economy. That's not only modest, but it's a very clear and maybe simple proposal. A common good balance sheet already exists. We have developed it amongst many diverse experts and practitioners, has been applied by almost 1,000 companies. And as we haven't had this bottom-up process so far, what we have done is using the best available existing results in democracies, which are fundamental values that are already enshrined in our constitutions, which you see in the green horizontal line, from human dignity to solidarity and justice, environmental sustainability, of course, climate stability and stability of biodiversity, to transparency and co-determination. These are not our preferred or preferential values. These are the most frequent fundamental values in democratic constitutions, and we propose to measure, at least to evaluate, but maybe even to measure to which degree a company or any other organization lifts these values towards its stakeholders. And then another small innovation of ours, in order not to just have another sustainability report, which is not binding nor comparable with others, we propose to make it measurable and comparable in its results, maybe not in euros or dollars, but in common good points, and then put the result on the label of all products and services, the front door and the website of every company affected. Then, only then, consumers and investors have a better informed choice in markets, and policymakers can help companies that do not externalize costs, because they internalize costs and externalize benefits. Today, they have higher costs as a consequence and higher prices and a competitive disadvantage vis-a-vis other companies that do externalize these costs and thus damage the global climate and biodiversity. And as a consequence, they are rewarded systemically today. They have lower costs, lower prices, and a competitive advantage. How can we fix that? Well, linking the common good balance sheet result to a whole range of incentives, from starting from public procurement in local communities and cities, to economic promotion programs, to differentiated tax rates, to differentiated loan conditions by ethical banks, up to the global world market, to differentiated access conditions to the world market. The exercise is successful once the most climate-friendly products and services are the cheapest ones for consumers. Same with the financial system. Maybe I jump over this because I just have 2 minutes left in my presentation. I already made a mentioning that banks would only grant credits into the real economy and only after having approved an ethical risk assessment next to the financial risk assessment. The summary would be that it would still be a market economy, but it would no longer be a capitalistic market economy. It would be an ethical market economy, and it would be something that resembles much stronger the original oikonomia than the original Schematistike. In this diagram, you see that there is an alternative to capitalism and socialism. It's an economy, and needless to add, for the common good. So I think I have just 1 minute left, so I only end in headlines. Same with global trade. Instead of having to decide between two extremes, which is opening completely or closing completely, which is enshrined in the European Treaty today, we could choose ethical world trade, which considers trade as a means and not as neither as an end in itself nor as something bad. And this would create a completely different trade order than today. we know from citizen assemblies that people would support such an intermediate and moderate approach. The proposal is to change the European Treaty, turning trade into a means for the global common good. And maybe I don't have the time to go through my arguments, so I just close in order to respect the time with the global movement that we have created. 3,000 companies have joined in the last 10 years. This is when we started, in all sectors, from agriculture to banking to public health insurers, getting a prize in a climate conference in Poland. Municipalities are joining, cities are joining, Amsterdam is entering the economy for the common good. And we have the support from the European Economic and Social Committee. A majority of 86% approved the inclusion or the recommendation to the European institutions to include the economy for the common good in the European law and the law of its member states. Yes, and you're welcome, more than welcome, to join in the Netherlands or wherever you live, in your local chapter, in your university, or in your city council. This is where we are active, and I'm happy to share more in the discussion, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Christian. What a great talk it was. Indeed, it's very energizing, and it's a great overview you gave also of your research and your work. It's about nature protection rights, the ecological footprint, re-embedding the economy, the common good matrix and the common good balance sheet, and especially the ECG label, which are very innovative tools. And of course, the legal incentives, the ethical market economy and ethical world trade. So indeed, let's change the system. And I think that's also a nice, maybe, a nice way to open up the discussion floor.